As I begin, I want to acknowledge that I am recording this talk on what we now call Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis. For me, it is important to start by recognizing the many First Peoples that lived and learned in this place on the banks of what is colonially called the North Saskatchewan River, a place where First Peoples came together long before the arrival of my settler and immigrant ancestors. Especially as we talk about topics like generative AI and its impact on learning, it is crucial that we think about the places we are located and the very real possibility of these new technologies to replicate or even deepen injustices. Injustices that are not just the relic of the distant past, but carry on to this day. I serve as the University of Alberta's Vice Provost Learning Initiatives. In that role, I've had the great pleasure of chairing the university's task force on generative AI in the learning environment. And I am deeply indebted to the task force members whose conversations have informed my thinking, but who also bear no responsibility for the ways in which I'm framing it in this talk today. By background, I'm an adult educator. I mention this to make clear that I'm not claiming to be an expert on generative AI. My expertise lies in thinking about pedagogy, for me, grounded in the work of folks like Bell Hooks and Paulo Freire. Thinking critically about how we structure our learning environments can help us co-create a world that is more socially just and environmentally sustainable. The arrival of OpenAI's ChatGPT in November of 2022 has thrust the topic of generative AI and learning onto center stage. For folks engaged in the world of artificial intelligence, the arrival of ChatGPT was perhaps less surprising. But for many of us, myself included, the ability of a tool to produce text and images that were decent facsimiles of what a human could do was absolutely astounding. In response, there was concern about what this meant for particularly post-secondary education. If a tool like generative AI could produce decent texts, what was the point of toiling away at university for 4 or 5 years, often learning significantly by producing texts or images, such as essays and lab reports? In this talk, I want to suggest that generative AI presents an opportunity for post-secondary institutions to reorient themselves on academic citizenship, our collective benefits and responsibilities as members of university communities. There has been much amazing work already done in the areas of pedagogical justice and authentic assessment that we can use this disruptive moment to rethink how and what we are teaching our next generations. Key to this conversation is problematizing what I mean by academic citizenship. There is a great literature review conducted by Albia and Cheng from this year. That review outlines one of the threads in the existing literature as the service component of the work of faculty members at a university. They also note that this is a rather narrow definition and are being challenging us to reimagine, and conclude academic citizenship should be examined as a practice of an enactment, one that pays attention not only to the undertaking of certain activities having moral, altruistic, or civic merit, but also to how academics draw on freedoms, autonomy, and individual motivations in their participation in a range of academic work viewed integratively. The University of Alberta has a requirement that all of its graduate students complete an ethics and academic citizenship component. Conversations are also underway about how to translate that from the graduate to the undergraduate context. One final note before moving on to how we might apply this concept to the arrival of generative AI. The concept itself of citizenship itself is rightly contested. There are questions about the ways in which it is operationalized to define who is a member or not a member of a group. In a university context, we need to be really clear that academic citizenship should not just apply to the students, staff, and faculty of an institution, but also to, for example, the communities that we partner with and serve. Our work needs to consider not just the impact on the citizens of the university, but also on the many others who benefit from or have a stake in or have experienced harm from the work of universities. The practice of citizenship is also rightly criticized because of the implicit nature of what it means to be a good citizen. And as I mentioned in my opening acknowledgement of the territory where I am located, there are many examples of how our enactment of good citizenship has actually caused significant harm to individuals, from equity-denied groups and to communities and the environment. So how does all of this apply to the arrival of generative AI in the post-secondary learning environment? A concrete example is in the area of academic integrity. There are articles and news stories about how this new technology is enabling our students to cheat. Some of these stories push us to think of ways of detecting students and increasing surveillance of our learning environments so as to minimize cheating. Inspired by the work of our colleague Sarah Eaton at the University of Calgary and her colleagues and collaborators, it is crucial that we not start our thinking about generative AI from the idea that students are going to cheat. Starting from that place is not consistent with a sense of academic citizenship in which learners and instructors have responsibilities and duties to each other and to their communities. Clearly, when a student walks across the stage to receive their degree, we want that to be a marker that the student has completed a significant piece of work and that they are now able to put that learning to use in whatever comes next. There are some aspects of what we teach, whether that is writing, critical thinking, conducting a medical procedure, or designing built infrastructure, where it is crucial that we find ways for students to be able to demonstrate their achievement of those skills. Herein lies the disruptive moment for those of us working in institutions of higher learning. Many of our existing practices for helping students demonstrate their competence need significant reworking in light of things that generative AI can now do. How do we continue to graduate students who can write and think critically, two skills that I think continue to be important? But how do we do that when a tool like ChatGPT is able to approximate that work so well? One of the solutions is to speed up our adoption of what is often referred to as authentic assessment. Assignments that set students up for the kinds of activities that they will face in subsequent years of study or out in their careers beyond the university. Some of those assignments require students to demonstrate their learning absent the tools like generative AI, while others may actually have a very strong collaborative and integrative element with a tool like ChatGPT. There are many others working on this topic of authentic assessment, and I look forward to seeing their creativity as we reimagine new ways of creating assessments that support student learning and demonstration of achievement of learning outcomes. Coming back to academic citizenship, not only is it crucial that we not start our conversations on the assumption of cheating related to these new tools, but more importantly, I would argue that we think about the ways in which these tools are built, how they work, and what that means for their use in our learning environment. We are starting to see calls for the development of AI literacies, understanding at a basic level how a large language model is built, how humans are involved in setting out the algorithms and training protocols, and how at the end of the day, the outputs are not in any way thinking, but rather very, very sophisticated reproduction of word order patterns. Thinking about who builds these models and what biases they bring to their work is crucial if we were going to ethically engage with these tools. Thinking about the conditions of labor of the folks training the large language models is also crucial. The goal of enhancing our AI literacies is not to become expert in AI. In a university context, we have the fortune of working closely with folks who are experts in this space. But the goal of AI literacies is to understand these powerful tools and their ethical and privacy implications. I want to conclude by restating the opportunities and challenges of generative AI in the learning context. The arrival of tools like ChatGPT are disruptive, perhaps in ways that are even greater than the calculator or Wikipedia. We have an opportunity to use this disruptive moment to lean in to concepts like academic citizenship and all of its problematics. Using a practice of academic citizenship to these disruptions can help us highlight the existing work of colleagues towards more authentic assessments. grounded in pedagogical justice. That grounding suggests we are also enhancing equity, inclusion, diversity, and decolonization in our pedagogies and in our assessments. So I am hopeful that we can use this moment to help our universities achieve their societal missions. I also want to acknowledge that in order to use this moment in this transformative way, we also need to commit resources to support that transformation, especially emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic, when many of us spent far more time thinking about how we teach as we pivoted to remote forms of teaching and learning. We need to recognize that this new twist will require more work. I'm excited about this potential because I know that my teaching colleagues are creative and enthusiastic about their teaching here at the U of A and across the post-secondary sector. I want to work to create the space for my colleagues, to support them to be able to do this crucial work. Thank you.